The whisper. Before the storm, the Galactic Council Hall was filled with light and pride. Alien banners hung from the high walls, shining with colors that spoke of centuries of conquest and power. The great leaders of the galaxy sat in their seats, watching the chamber with eyes of confidence. They believed they were safe, that no threat could ever challenge their order. And yet, a rumor had begun to spread like fire through dry grass. A rumor about humans. At first, no one believed it. How could they, after all? Humans were seen as weak, fragile, and unimportant. The species from Earth were called many names in the council: primitives, dreamers, and even pests, but never warriors, never conquerors. So when whispers came about hidden human weapons, most laughed. The laughter was sharp, mocking, and full of arrogance. But the whispers did not stop. They came from traders who had traveled near the Sol system. They came from scouts who vanished at the edge of human space, and they came from the silence of patrol fleets that never returned. Silence, something even more frightening than open war. On this day, the council gathered to discuss the human question. Voices filled the chamber, echoing against the great glass dome above. "They hide behind myths," one alien leader shouted. "They are a small world. They cannot stand against us," another declared. The air was filled with pride and dismissal. Until the doors opened, the guard stepped aside, and a single human walked into the chamber. He wore no armor, no crown, no military uniform. He walked with quiet steps, his eyes sharp, his face calm. In his hands he carried a sealed black case. Smooth and featureless, every whisper in the chamber stopped. Every leader leaned forward. This was unexpected. No one had invited him, and yet, here he was, a human standing in the most powerful room in the galaxy. The envoy walked to the center of the chamber and placed the black case on the council table. The sound of it striking. The polished surface echoed louder than a cannon. The chamber went silent. Even the banners seemed to hold their breath. One of the council members leaned forward, his scales glittering in the light. "What is this joke?" he hissed. Others murmured, eyes narrowing, trying to measure the human's calm. But the envoy did not answer right away. Instead, he let the silence grow heavy. He let every leader in the chamber feel the weight of something they could not understand. Finally, the human spoke, his voice low but clear. "You should have left Earth alone." The words cut through the air like a blade. Simple, short, and full of meaning. The council members looked at each other, some with anger, some with unease. One of them laughed nervously. "Empty threats," he said, but his voice shook, because everyone could feel it. There was no bluff in the human's tone. The envoy opened the black case just enough to reveal a faint glow inside. It was not a weapon they recognized, not energy, not steel, not anything the galaxy had ever seen. But the glow alone made the air heavy. Some leaders felt their hearts race. Others could not breathe. The case closed again with a click. The envoy did not explain. He did not need to. For in that moment, the leaders realized the rumors might be true. Humanity might have hidden something far greater than anyone expected. The silence that followed was deeper than fear. It was the silence of realization. The silence of a galaxy beginning to understand that everything it thought it knew about humans might be wrong. The envoy lifted the case and turned to leave. He did not bow. He did not wait for permission. He walked out of the chamber with the same quiet steps. And no one stopped him. No one dared to. Behind him, the chamber was frozen. The leaders whispered in low voices, their pride now cracked with unease. Some demanded action. Others urged caution. But all of them knew one thing. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. For the first time, the most powerful rulers in the stars felt a shadow that came not from an empire or a fleet, but from a single human with a black case, a shadow that whispered of hidden power, a shadow that promised a storm was coming. The first shadow appears. The silence from the council chamber still lingered in the air, but silence does not last forever. Soon the galaxy's fleets began to move. Scouts patrolled the borders of human space, eager to prove the rumors false. They expected weakness, they expected fear. Instead, they found nothing, only empty space, dark stars, and the quiet watch of Earth's invisible eyes. In the distant sector of Vera, an alien patrol of 50 ships laughed as they crossed into Sol territory. Their commanders mocked the Council for its hesitation. "Humans cannot even build proper warships," one said. "Let us teach them fear," another replied. The fleet advanced, their weapons primed, confident they would return with stories of human surrender. But then the stars shifted. At first, they thought it was a sensor error, a distortion, a flicker of light. But then it grew darker, larger, as if space itself was bending. And then they saw it, a shape unlike any warship the galaxy had ever known. A Terran vessel emerging from the void, silent and vast. Its hull was black, swallowing light, its edges sharp like a blade drawn across the stars. Compared to the patrol fleet, it looked like a shadow come to life. The aliens laughed at first. The readings showed no high energy output, no visible weapons glowing. "An empty threat," their commander said. But his voice cracked as the ship turned. Its size was enormous, dwarfing even the largest dreadnoughts in the fleet. And when its engines whispered, the soundless hum reached through every alien hull like a ghostly vibration. Then it fired. Not a barrage, not a storm of weapons, just a single pulse. A beam of energy too fast to track, too bright to measure. In an instant, 10 ships were gone, erased from space as if they had never existed. No wreckage, no flames, only silence. The fleet panicked. Orders shouted through comms became screams. Shields to full power. Spread formation. But nothing mattered. The Terran warship fired again. Another pulse, another set of ships gone. Each strike was comm-controlled, like a teacher correcting mistakes. One captain begged for mercy, another tried to ram the human vessel, but all efforts ended the same way. Silence. Finally, the fleet commander shouted for retreat. The survivors turned their engines to flee. But the human ship did not chase, it let them go, it stood still in the void, watching, waiting, as if it wanted the survivors to run, as if it wanted them to carry the story back to the galaxy. And they did. The survivors limped back to their homeworlds, shaken and broken. They spoke of a shadow ship that moved like death itself. They spoke of weapons that defied reason. They spoke of silence, the silence that followed every strike. And across the galaxy, fear began to spread. Governments called emergency meetings. Military commanders demanded answers. The council leaders who had mocked the human envoy now sat in private chambers, whispering to each other. "What if the rumors are true?" one asked. "What if that was only one ship?" Another said. And no one had an answer. In the streets of alien cities, the common people whispered too. They had seen the images of the black hull, the way it blotted out the stars. They had seen the fear in their leaders' eyes, and fear is stronger than any weapon. Fear was spreading faster than light. Meanwhile, Earth remained silent. No messages, no declarations. The humans offered no explanation. Their fleets did not advance, their leaders did not speak, but silence itself became the loudest threat, because every mind in the galaxy now asked the same question. If one warship could destroy an armada, how many more were waiting in the dark? And in the deep of space near the cold edges of forgotten stars, another Terran ship stirred, silent, unseen, ready. The galaxy did not know it yet, but the first shadow was only the beginning, and the silence of that chamber was only the beginning. Panic across the stars. The galaxy had always believed it was safe. The great powers, the ancient empires, the mighty fleets, none had ever been truly threatened. But after the first Terran shadow ship erased an entire patrol, safety became an illusion. Fear crawled into every corner of every world. News spread faster than light. The survivors told their stories again and again. They spoke of black hulls that swallowed starlight, of weapons that erased ships without fire or wreckage. They described silence, the terrible silence that followed every strike. At first, some leaders dismissed the tales as lies, exaggerations, born of cowardice, but when more fleets failed to return, the laughter stopped. On the industrial world of Kriven, entire crowds gathered around holoscreens. Images of the Terran vessel filled the air, its shape like a blade drawn against the sky. Mothers pulled their children close, soldiers looked. Away, everyone could feel it. This was not just another species showing strength. This was something different, something older, something hidden for far too long. The council met again, but this time there was no arrogance. The chamber was filled with whispers, arguments, and the sound of fear. "We must prepare for war," shouted one commander, his horns glinting under the chamber lights. "No, war will destroy us all," countered another, trembling in her seat. For the first time in centuries, the most powerful voices in the galaxy had no clear answer. A scholar rose holding an ancient data tablet. He spoke of records long forgotten. He spoke of Earth's past, of warnings carved into archives when humanity was first discovered. Earth was quarantined for a reason, he whispered. Not because they were weak, but because they were dangerous. The chamber froze, the words hanging heavy in the air. Meanwhile, across the stars, governments scrambled, fleets doubled their patrols. Scientists worked day and night to study scraps of sensor data. Spies were sent into human space, but none returned. Merchants refused to travel near Sol, fearing they would vanish into the same silence. Markets crashed, colonies rioted, and, through it all, humanity said nothing. Earth remained quiet. Their silence became heavier than war drums. In the great capital of the Terran Empire, a young soldier asked his general, "Why do they not strike if they are so strong?" The general had no answer. Because silence is its own kind of strike. It forces the mind to imagine what comes next. And imagination is often more terrifying than reality. The galaxy trembled, but still, pride is a powerful poison. Some rulers refused to believe. "They cannot be stronger than us all," said the Emperor of Vera. "We will gather every fleet, every weapon, and crush them." His words echoed across the stars, but even his people did not believe. His speech sounded hollow, desperate, because the shadows of the Terran ships had already planted seeds of doubt. Then came the second report. A mining fleet near the edge of Sol space had vanished. Not destroyed in battle, not captured, just gone. Their last transmission was a scream, followed by silence. This was no accident. This was a message. In taverns and markets, the common people whispered, "Maybe the humans do not want war," they said. "Maybe they only want to remind us who they are." But others shook their heads. "No, this is only the beginning." The panic grew. Some species began evacuating colonies near human borders. Others demanded the council reveal what they knew. But the truth was simple. No one knew anything. No one understood the limits of Terran power. And in fear, ignorance becomes its own weapon. The humans did not move their fleets. They did not broadcast demands. They did not ask for tribute or surrender. They waited. Their silence spread like a shadow. And across the galaxy, every ruler, every soldier, every citizen began to hear the same question echoing in their hearts. How long before the humans decide to strike? The panic across the stars was not just fear of death. It was fear of the unknown. And nothing in the galaxy is more dangerous than that. The forgotten archives in the deepest halls of the Galactic Library, where dust-covered data crystals older than empires, an alien scholar searched with trembling hands. His name was Tovran, a thin and nervous figure, his long fingers shaking as he slid ancient tablets into the reader. The council had ignored him for years, calling him a dreamer, a fool who studied forgotten warnings instead of modern science. But now, after the Terran shadows appeared, his words no longer sounded like madness. Now, leaders sent him searching for answers, desperate answers. The library was silent except for the low hum of old machines. Rows of records stretched for miles, storing the secrets of species that had died long ago. Tovran read faster, eyes burning, his voice whispering as he uncovered fragments of lost history. The story of Earth was buried deep, hidden behind sealed files marked with warning sigils. Most scholars had skipped over them, believing Earth was nothing more than a primitive world that rose too late to matter. But the truth was older and darker. The records spoke of first contact, thousands of years ago, When early explorers reached Sol, they did not find weakness. They found fire. The humans were young then, their ships small and crude, but their will was unbreakable. One scout fleet tried to enslave them, and it never returned. Another tried to bombard their world, but the humans built weapons from scraps, weapons strong enough to drive the invaders back. The reports described them as feral, relentless, and impossible to control. Tovrin's heart pounded as he scrolled through the files. The last entry froze him cold. It was not a council decision, not an agreement of peace. It was a warning carved in bold red text. Quarantine Earth. Never provoke, never invade, never awaken their shadow. He leaned back, shaking, his mind racing. They had not left Earth alone out of mercy. They had left Earth alone out of fear. Fear that had been forgotten, covered by arrogance. And now the shadows had returned, proving the warnings true. Tovrin rushed to the council chamber with the data in his hands. The guards hesitated before letting him in, but the desperation in his voice forced them aside. He placed the crystal on the table and activated the holo display. The words glowed in the air, old and undeniable. The council members leaned forward, their faces pale, their voices low. "This cannot be true," one whispered. "These records are ancient lies." Another tried to insist, but the silence in the room betrayed them. Deep down, they knew the truth. Every vanished fleet, every erased patrol, every silent battlefield confirmed it. The warnings had not been lies, they had been prophecy. One council leader slammed a fist against the table, his scales rattling with anger. "So we were fools," he growled. "We mocked them, we prodded them, and now we have awakened the storm." His words carried no pride, only fear. Outside the chamber, news spread quickly. Tovrin's discovery leaked into the streets, whispered through markets, carried by frightened workers. The common people now knew the truth. Earth had always been dangerous. The fear that had gripped the rulers now spread through entire civilizations. Parents told their children to stay indoors. Workers abandoned factories. Soldiers looked to their generals and saw only doubt in their eyes. In a dark corner of the galaxy, the Terran shadows stirred again. Another fleet sighted a black vessel drifting like a silent predator. It did not attack. It only watched. Its presence was enough. Ships turned back before firing a single shot, because now they knew the history. Now they understood what it meant for Earth to awaken. Tovrin returned to his library, sitting alone in the silence. He whispered the words again and again. Never provoke, never invade, never awaken their shadow. But it was too late. The galaxy had already done all three. The storm was coming, and no archive, no record, no forgotten warning could save them from it. The test of fire. The galaxy had never gathered so many warships in one place. From every corner, from every empire, from every proud fleet. They came, battleships the size of cities, cruisers armed with endless cannons, swarms of fighters humming like angry insects. Over 1 million vessels assembled at the border of human space, their engines glowing like a sea of stars. It was called the Grand Armada, a force so massive that even the galaxy's oldest wars had never seen its equal. Leaders stood in their command towers, watching their fleets form lines. They believed this show of power would finally crush the Whispers. They believed humans could not stand against the united strength of the galaxy. But belief and truth are not the same. On the command bridge of the Veyran flagship, the Emperor himself watched the void. His voice thundered through the comms. "Today we end this farce. Today we erase Earth's shadow." The soldiers cheered, but behind their voices was doubt. They had heard the rumors. They had seen the fear in their captain's eyes, and then the darkness shifted. 3 shapes appeared, sliding out of the void like predators from deep water. 3 Terran warships. Only 3. The Armada laughed at. First, the sound rolling through the comms like thunder. 1 million ships against 3. It seemed like a joke, but no one laughed for long. The Terran ships moved with slow, deliberate grace. Their hulls were black, reflecting no light, swallowing stars as if they were nothing. No energy signatures, no visible weapons, just silence. The commanders ordered the fleets forward, cannons powered up, engines roared. And then the order was given. Fire. The void exploded. Millions of blasts streaked across the darkness, filling space with blinding light. The Terran ships disappeared in the storm, swallowed by fire. Cheers erupted across the comms. "See? They are nothing," one captain shouted. But the cheer died quickly, because when the light cleared, the Terran ships were still there. Untouched, silent, unmoved. The galaxy's strongest weapons had done nothing. Not a scratch, not a dent, not even a flicker in their shields. Panic rippled through the armada. Commanders barked orders. Focus fire. Target engines. But the humans moved at last. One of the black ships glowed faintly, a pulse building deep within its core. Then came the strike. A single beam, clean and sharp, tore through the void. An entire line of cruisers vanished in silence. Another beam followed, and then another. Each shot erased hundreds of ships. Each strike left no wreckage. The armada broke into chaos. Some ships fled, some charged in desperation, but nothing mattered. The three warships carved through the million like predators among prey, their movements calm, measured, as if they were not fighting but teaching. Every strike was a lesson, every vanished fleet a reminder of the old warnings. This was not war, this was demonstration. The Emperor shouted orders, his voice shaking. "Hold the line, hold the line." But his words were drowned by screams. Entire battalions vanished into the dark. One admiral begged for mercy over the comms. Another detonated his own ship rather than be erased. The galaxy's greatest armada became a graveyard in less than an hour. And then, just as suddenly, the Terran ship stopped. They did not chase the survivors. They did not destroy every last vessel. They stood silent, watching as if to say, this was enough. The surviving ships fled in terror, engines burning at full power. Their comms carried only one word over and over: retreat. When the survivors returned, the galaxy fell into shock. The Grand Armada, the greatest force ever assembled, had been shattered by only 3 ships. It was unthinkable. It was impossible. And yet it had happened. In cities across the stars, people wept. Generals locked themselves in silence. Leaders hid their fear behind empty speeches. But every citizen, every soldier, every child knew the truth. Humanity's hidden power was real, and it was beyond anything the galaxy had ever known. The test of fire was over, and the galaxy had failed. The silence falls. The galaxy had always been loud. Voices of leaders shouting commands, the roar of engines, the endless chatter of trade and politics. But after the fall of the Grand Armada, a strange new sound spread across the stars. Silence. Worlds that once boasted of power now whispered. In fear, markets that rang with the sound of trade now stood empty. Fleets that once patrolled with pride now drifted aimlessly, captains afraid to cross into human space. The galaxy was quiet, and in that quiet, terror grew. On the council homeworld, the great chamber was half empty. Many leaders had not returned since the battle, some too ashamed, others too afraid. Those who came sat in silence, their eyes darting like hunted prey. No one shouted now. No one mocked. Even the proudest voices had cracked. "They spared us," one whispered, his voice trembling. "Why did they not finish the job?" asked another. No one could answer. The silence of the Terran warships was worse than their weapons, for in silence, imagination thrives, and every mind imagined a different ending, most of them darker than war itself. Across the stars, survivors of the battle lived like shadows. Some refused to speak at all, their minds broken by the sight of entire fleets erased in a heartbeat. Others screamed at night, remembering the glow of the Terran beams. The galaxy's bravest soldiers had become broken messengers, carrying fear instead of hope. And then came the message. It was not shouted. It was not broadcast across every channel. It was a simple transmission, carried on a single encrypted wave. It reached every government at once. A human voice, calm and steady, spoke only a few words. This was only a warning. The message repeated once, then ended. No demand, no negotiation, just a warning. And the silence that followed was louder than any explosion, Entire empires froze. Generals stopped issuing orders. Presidents sat in dark rooms, their hands shaking. The galaxy had been struck not only by weapons, but by doubt. Every ruler now feared the same thought. If this was a warning, what would happen when humanity stopped warning? On the world of Kriven, a child asked her mother, "Will the humans come for us?" The mother had no answer, only silence. In taverns, in ships, in marketplaces, the same question echoed again, and again, no one dared to answer. The galaxy began to change. Trade routes shifted away from human borders. Colonies close to Earth were abandoned, left to rot, and still the humans said nothing. They made no move to expand, no move to conquer. They simply waited, and waiting itself became a weapon. Silence ruled the stars. It was not peace. It was not war. It was something worse. A heavy shadow pressing down on every mind. The kind of silence that made even the strongest leaders afraid to speak too loudly. One night in the council archives, Tovrin the scholar stood alone. He stared at the warning etched in red. "Never awaken their shadow," he whispered to himself. "They tried to warn us, and now we have woken it." He closed his eyes, knowing the storm was not yet over, because silence does not last forever. It is only the breath before something greater, and in that silence humanity was still watching, still waiting. The galaxy had fallen quiet, but deep inside, every world knew the truth. The storm was not finished. It had only paused. The new order. The galaxy had changed forever. The great empires that once shouted in pride now spoke in whispers. The fleets that once ruled the stars now hid in their own systems. And all of it was because of humanity. But humanity did not rise with banners. They did not send armies to conquer planets. They did not demand tribute or slaves. They ruled with something far more terrifying. They ruled with silence. On the council homeworld, the chamber was nearly empty. Only a few leaders still came, the rest sending shadows or silence. Even the mighty Terran Empire, once loud in its threats, now sat quiet. The survivors of the Grand Armada avoided each other's eyes, each remembering how 1,000,000 ships had fallen to only 3. The humans had spoken only once. This was only a warning. Since then, nothing. No demands, no orders, no threats. And yet their silence commanded more obedience than any empire in history. In the streets of alien cities, fear became tradition. Children grew up hearing stories of black ships that swallowed stars. Merchants whispered that Earth had eyes everywhere. Soldiers trained not for battle, but for the chance to flee if they ever saw a Terran shadow. But among the rulers, debate still burned in secret rooms. Some whispered of surrender, offering their worlds before Earth even asked. Others whispered of rebellion, desperate schemes to build new weapons, but none acted, because acting meant drawing attention. And in the silence, no one wanted to be noticed by humanity. On a mining colony near the Galactic rim, a fleet of smugglers tried to test their luck. They slipped into Sol's borders thinking the humans would ignore them. Their ships never returned. No report, no wreckage, only silence. The message was clear. Earth saw everything. Earth tolerated nothing. And yet, Earth never expanded. They stayed within their own space, their ships silent watchers in the void. It was not conquest. It was not tyranny. It was something stranger, something colder. The humans had no need to shout. They let fear rule for them. In his library, Tovrin the scholar sat before the ancient warning. He wrote new words in his own hand, words for future generations. The galaxy fell not by war, but by silence. The humans did not conquer us. We conquered ourselves with fear of them. His hand trembled as he carved the final line. And still they wait, patient as the dark across the stars. Silence became the new order. Species bowed without being asked. Borders shrank without being touched. And Earth stood at the center, quiet and untouchable. A lone human ship drifted along the edge of alien space, its black hull swallowing the light of nearby stars. It did not fire. It did not move. It only waited. and still entire fleets turned away at the sight of it, because in that silence, every alien heard the same unspoken truth. The humans had not shown their full power yet. The galaxy was silent, not because it chose peace, but because humanity had left it no other choice. This was the new order, an empire of silence, an empire built not on conquest or words, but on fear, patience, and shadows, and deep within Seoul, in the quiet halls of Earth's command, the humans prepared for the day when silence would no longer be enough. The storm had not ended. It was only waiting, and the galaxy knew it. That knowledge was the heaviest silence of all.